Ready?
Yep, ready to go.
Great, okay, very good. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. Good. So the federal shutdown isn't over for thousands of federal contractors and their employees. These are people and businesses that work shoulder to shoulder with federal employees to make the federal government work for all of us. And they clean office buildings and keep us safe and secure and serve millions of meals a year. But too often, these workers are just invisible to the public. And I want you to know that those of us here today have not forgotten you. Congress recently passed legislation to provide back pay to federal employees. It's just common sense that the contractors who work side by side with all of us deserve back pay too. This shutdown was wasteful and made pawns of hundreds of thousands of people. Federal contractors have never been made whole in any shutdown, including this one, and that needs to change. Why should these hardworking people be forced to pay the price of the shutdown themselves? We think that that's wrong, and we are working to fix it. But we need to get legislation passed because admiring this problem is not going to fix it. So here's what our bill would do. It uses an existing contracting process known as an equitable adjustment to make sure contractors can provide back pay to workers, with full back pay to low-wage workers and partial back pay to everyone else. Our effort is gaining support every day. In the Senate, we now have 37 of us signed on to our bill. And in the House, I understand there are 29 co-sponsors and counting. And we're continuing to work with our Republican colleagues in hope of garnering their support. And I'm optimistic that we'll be able to get their support on this issue. In fact, a couple of House Republicans have written a letter on this topic just recently. So I want to thank the workers who have come here today to share your stories, and thank you so much to Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who will be here shortly. She's voting, and to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who has been a leader on this for a long time, and to my Senate colleagues who are here and have joined us, and also to our friends from SEIU for helping to organize this event and give workers a voice around this country. This is an important opportunity for Republicans and Democrats to join in to do something good. And if you're listening out there and you think that it's wrong that hardworking people got a pay cut because of a shutdown fight that had nothing to do with them, then it's time to make your voice heard. Let's fix this. Congressman.
Well, it's important that you'll see. So far, I'm the only House member here. There were three of us. One from, but they're coming. There are three of us who've taken leadership on this bill. You've just heard from Senator Tina Smith. I want to thank her and my co-sponsor in the House, Ayanna Pressley. She'll be here soon, for working with me and for working with SEIU. All of them for their leadership at a time when we are here to say we have not forgotten these contract workers. We are pleased that 800,000 federal workers are finally back at work, even though the repercussions of that shutdown on them is still being felt. At least they'll be made whole. Well, our contract workers are out there and could be forgotten, except for what we're trying to do here and will continue to do as well in the days ahead. You know, I was astounded to have my staff look to see how many contract workers are there. We don't even know how many contract workers there are. That is, we know that there are 10,000 companies and 200 million a week that was lost. So you keep adding that up and you'll have some idea of who's paying the price. We have an obligation to do what we can to make up for what was lost. Particularly since, why do we use contract workers? The federal government uses contract workers. That was work previously performed most often, by federal workers because they wanted to save money. They save benefits sometimes, at least the federal government isn't paying the benefits. They may save wages as well. We have no right to save money by depriving employees who were kept from going to work or who went to work and lost wages. So there are several stabs that those of us in the House have taken in this. I want to strongly support the House version of the bill Senator Smith has spoken about, and it's important to understand that the underlying basis for our bill is contract law. So that means that contracts can be modified when there are change conditions. Surely a shutdown qualifies as a change condition. The bills take several different tacks. Our bill uses 200% of the federal poverty level, so that gets at least some contract workers and some back pay. A bill that I've sponsored with Congresswoman Pressley focuses on the lower wage contract workers, those that may have been most disadvantaged, those security, cafeteria workers, and the rest. And the only reason we did it that way, and we're on the other bill as well, is that we know what it takes to get a bill passed in the House and the Senate. In addition, I am the lead on a letter that we've sent to OMB. You don't even need legislation to do this. So we've asked OMB to use its inherent power to modify these contracts to give some recompense to these workers. The point here is that if we let the fact that federal workers have gone to work keep us from focusing on hundreds of thousands of contract workers, they will be lost now and in any coming shutdown. Our bill has strong support. We must not let the long-awaited end of or the pause, as it may be, of the shutdown be the end of our obligation to contract workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Chris, would you like to go? Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I want to thank Senator Smith and my colleagues from the Senate, of course, Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. Thank you for your leadership on the House side. And we're here with a simple message, Senator Smith said, which is that this battle is not over until everybody is made whole. And service contract employees were left out in the cold. They had absolutely nothing to do with the shutdown, and they should not be the casualties of a shutdown that they had nothing to do with. And so we're all going to work very hard to make sure that when we keep the government open 3 weeks from now, in that same bill, we provide this legislation to make sure that service contract employees are made whole. And we need all of you in the fight with us. I want to thank as well our friends from SEIU, especially 32BJ. We have the president here. He's going to be speaking. Hector Figueroa, my friend Jaime Contreras is here, and it's great to see everybody else here, including Ms. Johnson and others. It's good to see you again. Again, these are the stories that the bill is intended to address. People who do absolutely necessary but often thankless jobs supporting the federal government, janitors, security guards, cafeteria workers, and we cannot leave them out in the cold. And so when we pass this legislation, this has got to be part of it. So thank all of you for being part of this coalition. Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is a very important statement that I think the country has to hear. There are many, many people who are suffering right now because there is no legislation that has passed that guarantees that they get their back pay. You know, federal workers, because of the great work of Chris and others, they knew that there would be back pay. Not these contract workers. They don't know that. And they may never get paid. Because if you kick Donald Trump in the heart, you're going to break your toe. So it's going to take the Congress to pass the legislation in order to ensure that those people do get their pay. I did a press conference at Logan Airport last Monday with 32BJ. And there, the contractors won't even allow the SEIU to unionize all these workers who are subject to sexual harassment, They don't get their pay at the levels which they should. They just withhold it. And there's a fight going on with contractors everywhere. And so what we need to do is just to make the statement quite clear who these contract workers are. They're janitors. They're secretaries. They're cafeteria workers. They're just people living paycheck to paycheck. And they're working just as hard as the people who are in the federal government, who will be protected. And we have a moral obligation to protect them. So that's why I'm so grateful to Senator Smith for her introducing this very important legislation, and to my great colleague from Massachusetts, Ayanna Pressley, for introducing it on the House side, along with Eleanor Holmes Norton. This is a fight we must have on the floor of the House and Senate to protect those people who are most vulnerable to the consequences of the shutdown.
Very good. Thank you.
My name is Richard Blumenthal. I'm from Connecticut, and I have marched in Connecticut with many of the great SEIU workers there. I'm very proud to stand with you again today. I've marched on picket lines against private employers who have a moral responsibility to do the right thing by their employees. They are contractors for big companies. I never thought I would be standing with SEIU workers because of the federal government imposing this kind of injustice. The federal government. The federal government is us, the American people. We should have no question that the federal government should be doing the right thing for workers who perform essential services for the people of the United States. We can debate the legalities, the contractual obligations, the statutory provisions, but there's no debating the moral responsibility. This shutdown had humongous costs for the United States of America, measured in dollars, maybe $12 billion, far more than Donald Trump requested for his medieval wall, a travesty, a waste of taxpayer dollars that we will stand strong to prevent. But the bill that comes out of this conference committee should also do the right thing by federal workers. And those federal workers include low-wage service workers who are there among us. We see them every day. There are brothers and sisters, literally. And we should make sure that the moral stain of this shutdown is spared them, not to mention the financial impact that they bear because they are truly living paycheck to paycheck. So to those workers, and I would hope to as many as possible of the workers who are on the job and were on the job every day during this shutdown, we should pledge to do the right thing, to honor our moral obligation, and to say, we will stand with you. And again, my thanks to SEIU, to my wonderful colleagues, particularly Senator Smith, who has led this effort. And I'd like to now yield to
My turn.
Senator Hirono, Connecticut, Hawaii. You can't be further apart geographically, but we are always together.
Practically joined at the hip.
Yeah, we are joined at the hip.
Practically, yes, yes. Thank you very much. I'm very proud to be here with my colleagues from both the House and the Senate, and of course for Senator Smith and leading the charge on the Senate side, and for the counterpart efforts in the House. Thank you, SEIU, for bringing us together so that we can focus on what's happening to the contractors and who contract with the federal government. I don't think that there's anything more scary for any family than to face the prospect of no paychecks. I don't think there's anything scarier, because I know from my own experience when my mother was our sole breadwinner, and there was a time when she lost her job. And I was a kid, but my gosh, to not even know how we're going to pay our rent and pay our bills, that was what was happening through this totally unnecessary, unconscionable shutdown. Most of us spent time with the federal employees in our states and with our contractors, so literally we shed tears hearing these stories about people having to think about being evicted. Many of them were actually going to the food bank, as you all know. I spent some time at the Oahu Food Bank. There are about 800,000 people on Oahu. And that particular food bank sends out something like 1 million pounds of food every month. But I was told that because of the shutdown, more food was having to be brought together and to be taken out. And I was there when they were putting together hundreds and hundreds of food bags for the federal employees as well as for all the contractors. So it's just, the prospect of the president so cavalierly saying, well, if I don't get what I want come February 15th, maybe we'll have another shutdown. See, this is the kind of morality that is exhibited, and every time a federal employee has to go through this, there's a counterpart person who is a federal contractor. And just as this shutdown cost our economy $11 billion, and billions of dollars will go to pay, to give the shutdown pay to our federal employees, billions of dollars are not going to all the federal contractors. In fact, the last time we had a shutdown, I talked with one of the contractors with federal government, and that one contractor lost hundreds of thousands of dollars that they never got back. This is money that they would be paying their employees. So this is what we're facing. Totally unnecessary. This kind of support for our contractors have to be enacted, because as government privatizes more government jobs, every time something like this happens, more and more people are going to be harmed. And that is why we all need to come together. And another thing I'm proud of is Hawaii is one of the states that has one of the highest percentages of unionized workers, and we want to keep it that way. So thank you all for being here.
Very good. Hector, there you go.
Thank you, Senator Smith and Congresswoman Holmes Norton and Congresswoman Pressley for this legislation. I want to say that on behalf of all the 170,000 members of 32 BJ and the members that are here who are going to share their stories shortly after me, we really want to thank all the supporters in the Senate and the House, because what we are doing through this legislation is not only getting back pay to workers who have been living on the edge for weeks, suffering, with their families and their loved ones, trying to figure out how to feed themselves, feed their loved ones, trying to pay the rent, be able to pay for medicine, not knowing how long this shutdown was going to last and how much more they would have to suffer. We will not be able to fix the stress, the humiliation, the challenges day to day that these workers have gone through, but we can at least be able to make sure that this time around, unlike 2013, they're able to recover the money that they depend on. Our members, they live from paycheck to paycheck. They are hardly having any other resources, assets, or savings to rely on. And quite often, even if they return to work, if they don't get this money back, their lives are going to be impacted dramatically, forever. So we need to make sure through this legislation that we do justice to the contracted workforce, that safeguards our buildings, maintains our facilities, makes it possible for the federal government to function, and that in doing so, we also recognize the value of work. Over the last few weeks, we kind of have forgotten that working people are not pawns in a game. They are heads of families, they're brothers and sisters, they are neighbors, members of our communities. And as politics get to be resolved in the halls of Congress, our members need to be able to be there to provide for themselves, their families, and others. So I want to really thank you from the bottom of my heart, Senator Smith. I'm hoping that this legislation will pass. We don't need the legislation. Like Congresswoman Holmes Norton reminded us, action can be taken by the agencies today, right away, through special appropriations to make these workers whole. But if we need the legislation, we certainly want to make sure that it passes quickly and that, above all, we don't see the same drama that we have lived over the last few weeks repeated itself after February 15th. No more shutdowns. Let's be fair to working people, and let's advance policies and measures that really unite us rather than divide us. We have to reject the politics of division and hate. There are many casualties here of that policy. Let's try to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to invite Ms. Lila Johnson to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you very much for making sure that you try to pass bills so we all can get paid. We need to get paid whenever something like this come up as far as the shutdown concerned, because it really devastated my family. I thank God that I have a family like I have. I thank God that I have a union like I have. Thanks, Senator Smith and all her opponents. Because for the past, I'm just saying 2 months, because I had surgery for 2 weeks that before the shutdown come. Been 35 days after that without pay. I had a very loving family that stood by their mom, and I appreciate that. I have 2 loving great-grands that I raised. I've been in this building, Department of Agriculture, working for 21 years, cleaning service. And for me not to get paid for President Trump, they divide us and pay some and don't pay the other. It's not fair. We sanitize the place, cleaning bathrooms, cleaning floors, cleaning cafeterias. We make it sanitary for visitors to come into this building. All contractors, workers should get paid, because the work is not easy. The work is not easy. We have a hard time keeping the place sanitized for people to come in. Even this building here, you got contractors in here. So I feel it's unfair for the government workers to get paid, for them to get paid, and we don't get no money. That's slavery. He held us hostage for 35 days. I feel personally now he's still holding me hostage, because it's going to be like in March before, even when I go back to work, it could be like March before I even get a decent check. I had to go into my life insurance while I was out, borrow money against my life insurance policy. I have to pay that money back, because if anything happened to my children, like death, hey, that money that I borrow is going to come directly up before I even go to a funeral home. And I think it's so unfair for us not to get paid, back pay, like everybody else in federal government is getting paid.
Thank you very much, Ms. Johnson. And I'd now like to invite Mr. Devon Russell up to say a few words.
Okay. I'll try to keep this short like a tree stub. How's everybody doing today? I'll start off by saying, unfortunately, I'm not one of those people that has the support system that I can just call and ask somebody for some money. So with that being said, in addition to having a family I have to support with a 3-year-old daughter, I have bills just like everybody else, just like the government workers. I have credit card bills, I have loans, I have rent, car insurance, car note, everything, just like everybody else. So I don't see the difference in why we should be held without back pay, just like everyone else. We're basically doing the same jobs they're doing. So what is the difference here? We continue to work hard in our everyday lives. You know, we're all waiting for this 3 weeks. We don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully there's no, in addition with the government shutdown. we're going to continue to struggle going back to work because we're still in the hole. Like my colleague said, who knows when we're going to get a decent paycheck to catch up with all our bills. So we're basically still going to be working to get where we need to be with these next few months. And it's going to be even it's going to be even harder without the back pay. Let's not just flush our money down the toilet. We deserve it just like everybody else.
Let me just, I know that Congresswoman Pressley is finishing up her votes and is eager to join us, but is there anybody else here who'd like to say another word? Or would you want to?
She has something to say. Come on.
Well,
Here, stand a little there. You go. Make sure they
yeah,
can
because
hear
I
you.
little. Okay. Well, I'm asking first, thank you everybody for stay here, and I'm stay here for any family scared because I'm Hispanic and working in federal buildings, cleaning, housekeeping, include everything, clean bathroom, credential, clean everything, you know. And everybody have a family, have a people deceased, have a grandson. They need a one child, the $700,000, but I don't have it. I'm stay wait for somebody donate money, so or organization donate, you know, and then stay here because any family in Spanish stay scared, no need to talk, no need to say something, no need to say nothing. And everybody, they need to know what the family sacrifice in this country for working. Any family, any people, no matter who, no matter where, everybody stay the same problem. And they need, only what they need a payback contractor, because I'm contractor, I'm working for the companies and federal building. I'm working USDA department for 27 years. And my schedule is very tough. It's in the morning, 5:30. And clean the oven, the Mr. Verdura, 5:30 in the morning. So I need to pay back any contractor companies inside the government building. They need to pay back any families out there. Thank you.
Vamos a decir algo para la prensa en español. Para la prensa que está aquí en español hoy, estamos aquí con los trabajadores de bajo contrato de la 32BJ para que se les pague el dinero que han perdido con este cierre del gobierno federal que ha durado 35 días. Estos trabajadores gozan del apoyo de la senadora Smith, de la congresista Holmes Norton y también de la congresista Pressley, que se va a unir con nosotros en un momento. Y estamos aquí para decir de que deben recibir el dinero al que tienen derecho. Y nuestra hermana puede compartir su historia personal en español, cortito. ¿Podemos?
Okay. Sí. Mi nombre es Julia Quintanilla y gracias por estar aquí y apoyarnos en esta problema de cierre de gobierno de 36 días. Y no queremos, bueno, todas las familias no queremos que vuelvan a hacer eso porque necesitamos nuestros trabajos para poder darle a nuestras familias lo que necesitan. Porque todos siempre, todos, no importa quién sea, dónde esté, tenemos familias incapacitadas, enfermas, necesitan medicina. Yo tengo mi nieto también, necesita darle su medicina también. Así que nosotros lo que pedimos es que no estén haciendo esto y se pongan de acuerdo, no pongan las familias en estos problemas porque necesitamos trabajar. Todo lo que pedimos es trabajar nada más, no estamos pidiendo no más trabajo y que se nos paguen nuestros trabajos.
Muchas gracias. Gracias.
Yeah. I know Senator Hirono has to go to a committee hearing. Are there any questions people would like to ask me or any of our workers here? Yes.
Senator Smith, would the legislation require contractors to do back pay, or is this something that would be voluntary for them to do if they want?
The legislation uses an existing process in which the contractors need to ask for ask for reimbursement. But all the conversations that we've had with contractors and with the people in the federal government that manage these contracts tell us that this is the most streamlined and simplest way to make this happen, and we expect contractors to ask for that back pay. That's in their best interest as well as the interests of these workers. Yes. Well, I know that Senate Democratic leadership is very interested in including this in the final package. We just spoke about it at our caucus lunch today. And as I said earlier, I really believe that this is not a Democratic or Republican issue. It is an issue that is important in all 50 states and is important to everybody. So I am hoping and optimistic that we'll get and has the support of 36 others of my colleagues, including Senator Klobuchar, who just joined us. And this bill has the same bill as the bill that was introduced by Congresswoman Pressley, and it has upwards of 28, 29, 30 co-sponsors. Senator Klobuchar, would you like to say something?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, thank you. All right. Thanks for wearing that Viking purple. I know it's your SEIU shirt. That's okay. I want to thank my colleague, Tina Smith, for this incredible work on this bill and for really seeing over the horizon. When this shutdown started, I think many of us thought it was going to end quickly. Many of the pundits around thought, how could this continue? But what we soon learned is that it was going to go on, and it wasn't just about the workers, the 800,000 workers that have gotten so much rightful attention for working without pay or for not being able to even go into work with their doors shut down, but also the contract employees. And Tina was able to see that as an issue in the distance and started working on it immediately. So I am so glad that to support this bill and be part of the team of co-sponsors that are working to get it done, and thank her for her leadership. And just because the shutdown ended doesn't mean the hardship is over. Just yesterday, we found out that this shutdown is going to cost our economy $11 billion. And from what I understand, $3 billion of it they think we're not going to get back. You imagine what that money could have been going for in terms of paying for things for people and for not just for the contract workers, but for taxpayers of this country. Second thing is that the contract workers are everywhere. They're not just in the Washington, D.C. area. And I think that's important, and one of the reasons that I think it's great that our senator from Minnesota is leading the charge here. And one example, someone that we just heard from the Center for Earth Resources Observation, someone who's worked at this agency for years. She lives in my home state. She wrote a letter to us saying that she was afraid that contract employees like herself will be lost. They will be forgotten. And Tina has zeroed in with this Fair Compensation for Low-Wage Contractor Employees Act with contractors that get less money. They're not your wealthy contractors that some people think do business with the government. Sometimes there are those companies and people. But this is actual regular people who are just doing their jobs that are indistinguishable often from the full-time employees in terms of the work that they do. So I just want to thank Senator Smith for her leadership on this bill. I want to thank the workers on the front line, the face of this. What happened here, I was at the World Kitchen with Jose Andres just the last day of the shutdown, and that vision of thousands of people that were waiting in line, who were workers for our government on the front line, is something that I'll never forget. And I want to thank Tina Smith for leading the charge here, and all of you. I'm glad that their work is coming and that you can get back to work, but that doesn't make up for what happened. And that difference in wages that you lost out on, that contractors lost out on, is a month of the mortgage. It's a month of paying for your pharmaceuticals. It's a month of paying for food. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Shaw. Thank you very much. Great. Yeah. Okay. Oh, they're on their way. Okay. Are there any further questions while we're waiting for Congresswoman Pressley? Yes.
Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit more about how you determine which, like, the wage levels for different contract workers in terms of them getting back down to like a cutoff?
Sure.
And just talk a little bit about how
Sure.
it's formulated into this work.
Well, what the bill proposes is that contract workers would get compensated up to 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, which is $50,000. So how many people up here make $50,000? Okay. So these folks would get 100% of their lost wages. If you make over $50,000, then you would get compensated for the first $50,000 of your wages, and then nothing more after that. Okay. Was there one more question? Yes.
Senator, we've heard from you and your colleagues that the shutdown is mechanism that, in so many words, never happen again. Your thoughts on legislation where a continuing resolution would automatically kick in anytime you see a shutdown on the horizon?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at that legislation that some of my colleagues have put together. I think that it is really important for us, though, to stay focused on never having this kind of shutdown happen again. This sort of use of Americans and federal employees and federal contractors as pawns or hostages in a battle over a symbol is completely unacceptable, and we should not ever allow that to happen. So, and I'm so thank you. So good to welcome. Thank you for. So I think we should really stay focused on not allowing that to happen again. So I'm really very glad to be joined by my colleague from the House, Congresswoman Pressley, and would you like to say something? We've been talking about you all day.
Oh my goodness. All right, well, this is an incredible moment to have this presser and to be joined by all of you in solidarity. This is the first bill that I'm introducing, so I thank you all for being here today. For too long, the stories of the workers that make up the backbone of this very institution, of our communities and the districts that we represent, have been marginalized. The hourly wage earners who know the value of a hard day's work, who take pride in the honest work that provides for their families, our cafeteria workers, our security guards, our janitors, those working in the service industry who daily navigate systemic barriers and daily biases with grace and fortitude. On December 22nd, the occupant of the White House callously acted without regard for the livelihood of furloughed employees and federally contracted employees. He was not thinking about the grandmother raising 2 grandchildren, struggling to keep up with them and the bills. He was not thinking about the parent struggling to pay for childcare, or the student working to repay student loans, or any worker needing to pay their rent or mortgage. And the most common thread that we heard today, which is very consistent with a hearing that I'm in right now in oversight, is the number of people who were struggling and could not pay for their high blood pressure medication or insulin. He was not thinking about any of that when he callously made this decision. But it is all of our collective responsibilities now to act and to lift up the stories and the struggles of those left without pay and without recourse. I'm so grateful to my colleagues who have been on the forefront of this fight. Unfortunately, this is not the first shutdown we find ourselves in. Congresswoman Holmes Norton has been a steadfast champion for workers sidelined in this conversation. My colleague in the Senate and new friend Tina Smith has been a dedicated partner in developing a mechanism to get workers back pay and partnering on this bicameral bill. I'm honored to share this space and to be in this fight with our friends at ACIU 32, BJ. and the AFL-CIO. Today we stand before you as members, as workers. Each of us represents many others. We carry with us stories from our home districts, from our kitchen tables. I carry with me my days as an hourly hotel worker for some 6 years, where I often felt pride in my work but was cast over in the eyes of others. We are steadfastly focused on getting back pay for our workers. This is about dignity. This is about fairness. This is about justice. And I call on all of our colleagues to work with us to swiftly pass the Fair Compensation for Low-Wage Contractor Employees Act. Back pay now.
Very good. Very good. Are there any other questions from the reporters today? Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much.
Of course, I love it.
Oh, we are.
Congresswoman,
This is not over. It's going to be a thing. So, like I
This is your
said,
first mail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Remember Eugenio? Eugenio?
with her.
Get a picture?
Hi. Thank you, sweetheart.
Senator too?
Stand in the middle.
All right, stand in the middle now.
Let's get the sisters. Come on. Come on. I know. I just don't want to be in front of you.
No.